Good afternoon. It's easy for us to think that we are powerful, that we are capable, that we can handle things. And if we can't, well, there's people around us who can. They're the ones who have power and control. Well, maybe we shouldn't be so sure about that. Back in the days of Daniel in the Old Testament, Nebuchadnezzar was probably the most powerful person of that time. He was the king of the Babylonian Empire at the height of its power. The Babylonian Empire was one of the original superpowers of the world. In the second chapter of Daniel, though, we hear that Nebuchadnezzar was troubled and could not sleep. Well, what kind of threat could do something like that to a person who's as powerful as Nebuchadnezzar? Well, it wasn't another person. It wasn't another empire. But it was something that came from within himself that troubled him. And it was a dream that he had. That dream rattled Nebuchadnezzar to the bones. And he wasn't used to that. He was used to being the one who terrorized other people. When we're afraid, like Nebuchadnezzar was at this point, we tend to do crazy things. Fear and anger can be great motivators for action. But fear and anger generally do not lead us toward making good choices. And that was the case for Nebuchadnezzar. He was so freaked out by his dream that he issued an impossible order to his advisors. He told them not only to tell him what his dream meant, but he ordered them to tell him what his dream was. He said to them, "If you're so smart, you should be able to tell me what my dream was. I shouldn't have to tell it to you." And when they couldn't, of course, he was ready to execute all of them because they failed him. Now, it's not the smartest thing for a king to execute all of his advisors. You want to have someone to guide you, after all. Now, one of these advisors that Nebuchadnezzar was getting ready to kill was Daniel, a young exile from Jerusalem who had been put in Nebuchadnezzar's service. Now, when Daniel found out that as one of the king's advisors, he was scheduled to be put to death, Daniel did 6 things. And these are 6 things for us to keep in mind when we're in a similar situation. First, Daniel kept his cool. The Bible tells us that he spoke with wisdom and tact to the guards who came to take him away. That's in sharp contrast to Nebuchadnezzar, who was going crazy over his dream. Second, Daniel didn't assume that the situation was hopeless, because when God is involved, nothing is hopeless. Yeah, it's crazy to think you could know someone else's dreams, but you know what? God does crazy. Third, Daniel did not face the challenge alone. He called on his 3 friends, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. You see, God never asks us to face life's challenges by ourselves. He always gives us companions. This, by the way, is one reason why church is an integral part of God's plan for us. We are not meant to go through the life of discipleship all by ourselves. Fourth, Daniel dealt with the problem in front of him by praying about it. He and his friends prayed for God to show him the dream and what it meant. Prayer should be the first, not the last thing that we do. It is not something we should do when we run out of all of our other options. It's silly for us to say, well, we've done all we can. I guess now all we can do is pray. No, prayer should be our first course of action. And when Daniel and his friends prayed, God did the seemingly impossible. He revealed to Daniel not only the dream, but the dream's meaning. And that's good news, right? The things that Daniel did led to a successful conclusion. He kept his cool, he didn't think things were hopeless, he asked friends to help, and he prayed. Yes, but you know what? Daniel wasn't done yet. Because if you're paying attention, you'll remember I said Daniel did 6 things. I've only described the first 4 so far. The 5th thing that Daniel did was praise God for his power and blessing and mercy. And sometimes that's easy for us to forget. We ask God for help, and when he supplies it, we don't give him credit for it. We don't thank him for it. And then 6th, finally, Daniel made sure to give God proper credit to everyone else. The next morning, when he went to Nebuchadnezzar, the person who introduced him told the king, "Here's the man who can tell you what your dream means." And Daniel spoke up, "No, I can't. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." When God blesses us with the ability to do something, make sure we let other people know that he's the one who enabled us to do so. So, let's talk a little bit about Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In his dream, he dreamt of a statue that was made of different materials. The head was made of gold, the shoulders and chest were made of silver, the abdomen and hips were made of bronze, the legs were made of iron, and the feet were a mixture of clay and iron. This, by the way, is where we get the expression having feet of clay. Then in the dream, a rock that had been cut from a mountain crashed into the statue and smashed it into pieces, and then the rock grew until it filled the whole earth. Daniel told the king, "Your dream is a succession of kingdoms. Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom was the one symbolized by the gold head, but each kingdom to follow him would be successively less impressive. And the rock is God. God who will crush all human powers and establish his authority over all the earth." Well, Nebuchadnezzar was satisfied. He probably only paid attention to the part of the dream that said that his kingdom was golden and that the smashing would happen long after he was gone. But the dream carries a message not just for Daniel, but for all of us. Don't become enchanted by any human power, including your own power and ability. For you see, we are all standing on feet of clay, and we will all eventually crumble. Instead, put your trust in the Lord, whose glory and authority overshadows everything, a glory and authority that will reign for all eternity. Would you pray with me, please? Lord, when we face seemingly impossible tasks, help us to follow the pattern that Daniel sets for us. And when we're tempted to be like Nebuchadnezzar and think that we can put all of our confidence in ourselves or in others around us or in powers and authorities around us that seem to be so powerful, help us to remember that all power and authority belongs to you and to you alone. Amen. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk again later.